The script. You know what? I can show you what a script looks like. So we usually get a PDF, and we'll sometimes have our name on it. Come on, open up. So it's just like a screenplay or a teleplay. And give the computer a little time. It doesn't want to cooperate right now. But basically, our job is to turn words from the script into images. All right, I'm just going to skip over that. But you all know what a script is, right?
Yeah.
All right, you get the idea. Oh, sweet, now the whole computer's freezing. All right. There we go. So when I'm reading the script, I do thumbnail drawings. Have you guys heard of the term thumbnail?
Yes.
Because little drawings about the size of your thumb. Nail. And it's basically, as I'm reading, the shots are kind of, I'm seeing the movie as I'm reading it, or the episode, and I try to sketch out what I want each scene to look like. And they're really quick, ugly drawings. You guys shouldn't be looking at them. They're slow, right? But I can read them. And what I'm going to do is show you an example from thumbnail to rough drawing to finished drawing on a couple Star Trek sequences. So, you know, really hard to tell what's going on, but look at this thumbnail right here. We're going to start on two figures working a machine, and then the camera's going to pan and truck out to two different figures. All right. And this is what the rough drawing of it looks like.
Oh.
So it's still kind of tight. I'm always told I should go looser on my roughs. But I'm just placing the characters, doing some basic perspective. If you can see, I have a little perspective grid that I make for myself in the software. And there's my horizon line and my vanishing point. I'm going to talk more about those later. But that helps me kind of build the environment that they're in. And this is what it will look like cleaned up. Right, so I throw some gray tones in there, kind of put a colored mat behind each figure so they pop out a little. Let me show you another example. Here's more thumbnails. One of the characters, Boimler, the guy with the purple hair, is running with these containers that are going to explode. And I have this whole sequence. You know, there's a volcano exploding. That, believe it or not, is a thumbnail of a guy running and holding a bunch of barrels. And this triangle means to cut to a new scene. That's shorthand. And it helps me know when we're going from one scene to another scene. And I may draw some key poses. But every drawing I do in the storyboard starts here, just to get it out of my head and onto paper, as opposed to trying to read the script and starting with scene one and drawing that completely. What else should I do? Draw scene two. No, you kind of spin it all out here. And this is like your rough draft. And whether you're doing storyboards or illustration or comics, any kind of drawing, I highly, highly suggest doing a thumbnail of whatever you're going to draw first. Just so you can play around. Do I want to do this pose with this background? You can play with ideas really quick and really easy by doing this rough, dirty drawing first. Again, nobody else should see it. It's more for you. So let's jump ahead. This is the rough drawing of Boimler. There's a volcano exploding in the background, lava rocks dropping. This is the rough. And then this is what the cleanup looked like. Okay, so you can kind of see the different levels. Again, I should have picked better examples of roughs, but it's still sketchy, right? I'm still building the figure, but this is a much nicer, cleaner drawing to look at.
Question?
Yeah.
The rectangle, is that what the TV screen's gonna look like?
Correct. The viewer will only see what's in the box.
Okay, so
That's a byproduct of the software.
okay.
It just shows you what, yeah. So you're not drawing out, you don't want something important outside of it.
Makes sense.
I have a question too.
Yeah,
I didn't by any chance. Going back to that, what they were just talking about, is it best to just expand it out, or do they normally have to shrink some things in to fit into that box?
so what's great about drawing with computers now, as opposed to on paper, I've got that whole drawing. So the process, I'm doing a little bit of my storyboard presentation. You start with roughs, you give those roughs to your director. They make notes, and it's real easy to make notes and changes with the computer software as opposed to on paper. Right now, I've got this whole field. The director could say, all right, this works, but why don't we widen the frame out a little more? It's a click of a mouse and easy for us. I think in this scene, we kind of start tight on Boimler and then truck out to show a wider view of the chaos and craziness. So that's storyboards. What I want to do is kind of talk about different ways to get better at drawing. Obviously, you need practice. You guys have heard of the 10,000 hour theory? Has anybody here got 10,000 hours under their belt yet? Nice. Keep going. And there is something to that theory. It basically means the more you do something, anything, and keep learning, you will improve. So, something that helps a lot. My storyboards I've leveled up a bit. Once I started going to life drawing sessions. When I lived in LA, they happened all the time because a bunch of animators live around it, right? And a bunch of out-of-work actors needed work, so they would model for us. I don't mean to crap on actors. We all need, it was helping everybody out, right? And in these life drawing sessions, you'll kind of start with quick, speedy drawings that are known as gesture drawings, where you'll ask the model to pose for a minute or maybe two, and then a timer will go off and they'll change poses. And this is a great exercise to get you to do a lot of drawings very quickly. There's some life, there's some energy to it, right? This might have been a 5-minute pose. And then eventually they'll go to 10 minutes, 20 minutes. There are some sessions that are like 3 hours. Those are more for painters. But the gesture drawings, where you have to just get the full figure, get the essence, the movement of the pose as quickly as you can. Because when you're drawing storyboards, you're not doing one beautiful illustration. You're drawing hundreds of panels. And you're kind of animating too. So these gesture drawings really help you kind of get loose, warm up, and learn to draw quickly. So even if you can't make a modeling session, if you're drawing with your friends, ask one of them to pose for you. Actually, when we're doing the drawing demonstrations, I'm going to ask for a volunteer to come and be our gesture drawing model. We'll figure that out when you get there, but it's 2-minute poses. so we can all practice. One other method, I did not do these. These are my fellow board artist and director, June Key Park. We've worked on Harley together since the beginning, a bunch of Scooby-Doo stuff. He directed a few Kite Man episodes. He goes out into public places, a park, a food court, and he draws people he sees as quickly as he can. Then I think he goes back and adds the tone and the rendering. But drawing out in public, what are other places besides parks and food courts where you can draw? Yeah, conventions. There you go. Grab a table, and sit and practice. So these were all done from observation. He is there looking at the person he's drawing. And it's a great way to practice drawing normal people, right? When we start drawing, all we want to draw are anime characters, superheroes, fantasy stuff, the bigger than life. But you also need to learn to draw normal people. People of various sizes, of various ages, different ethnicities. Get good at drawing everything. So you don't just have one generic face you draw for men or women or both. Learn to observe what makes people different. And so when you're drawing your comic or your storyboard and you have your fantastic character, when you put them next to a normal character, they will look that much bigger than life, right? This also means learn to draw buildings and trees and cars. It doesn't all have to be from your head. You can go look at reference. I'm so mad that I started drawing in the 80s and 90s before the internet. Now we got Google Images for everything, right? Use it. We have all these great reference materials at our fingertips. And so one thing I did to practice recently, because there weren't any light drawing sessions happening, I went to Google Images and I searched for dynamic poses. And what I got were a few photos, but a lot of people's drawings of dynamic poses. I highly suggest don't copy someone else's art. When you're practicing, when you're warming up, drawing from life, and I want to see. Everybody wants to see your interpretation of what you're looking at, not your interpretation of someone else's interpretation of what they used for reference. Does that make sense? It's like making a photocopy and you keep using the photocopy and it's going to lose its quality after time. So I refined my search to photography reference dynamic poses, and there are tons and tons of resources. Yep.
One of the best websites you could probably use to do figure drawing is probably like Line of Action.
It's called Line of Action.
Yeah, I do that.
Also, walkthrough videos on YouTube. When you see people do like walkthroughs of cities, those are very good examples.
Okay.
People do those all the time nowadays. Because the tourism, people love to do that. It's a great example of doing buildings and seeing people actually moving around candidly.
Okay. I'm telling you what, another example that the internet is a fantastic resource for reference. But what's even better is going out in the real world, looking at it with your own eyes too. Okay? Granted, I'm not saying, oh, the internet sucks and we're all on computers. I'm looking at a computer almost all day, every day. But I found the way I got better, the way I learned was drawing from life. So do that as much as you can. So yeah, I practiced figure drawing because I was doing some action scenes, and this really helped me get loose. And I just did quick versions, not perfect, precise rendering of these poses. It ain't about them. It's about getting that line of action, that flow, that energy, and that feeling. And then draw from your imagination. Think up some poses and practice working on that. But don't do that exclusively. Again, if you want to improve your skills, looking at reference will build up your mental library so that you will be better when you're pulling it out of your own head. Okay? All right. Now, one other thing I suggest, when you get your first job or you're creating your own comic or your own storyboard, have you guys heard of the term model sheets?
Yeah.
Sweet. So this is a classic model sheet of the original Daphne from Scooby-Doo. This is what they used, 50 odd years ago when Scooby-Doo first came out. Over the years, they tried to change it, update their outfits, change their hairstyles. No, people didn't want that. They went right back to Daphne in the tights and the mini dress, Fred with his ascot. It's classic. And now they're kind of making the jokes like, oh, you're dressed like you're from the 70s. I love it. All these characters are deceptively difficult to draw from every angle. Actually, Scooby and Shaggy, they're a breeze, but Fred and Daphne are really, really tough. Now, these are called model sheets. They're also known as turnarounds. Obviously, because you're seeing the character from the front, the 3/4 view, the side view, the back 3/4, and the back. And these are used by story artists and animators, so they can know what the character looks like from whatever view. A little side note, there are a few different jobs in animation. I focus on storyboards because that's what I do. There are also character designers whose job it is to conceptualize what the character looks like and then draw them from all the different angles. There are fewer of those jobs, and yeah, you can spend more time on one drawing as a character designer than as a story artist. Here's Velma. So what I would suggest is if you're making up your own story, design your character, do a master drawing of them, draw them from a few different angles, warm up so you know what they look like from the front 3/4 side view. Do some different poses. Shoot, I'm kicking myself for not having an expression sheet. Let's see. Give me a minute, guys. No, but
Sorry.
yeah, this is a turnaround of Bane from the part of the show. But we will also often get like a sheet of drawings that show a character expressing happy, sad, different expressions like that. So once you're all warmed up, again, as a storyboard artist, you are telling the story. We take these kind of static, stiff, they're not really stiff, but they're not active, these characters, right? As a board artist, you get to make them act. You get to show them delivering the dialogue, showing fear, showing happiness, and one of the best ways to do that, let's go back to this. There's two main things, body language and facial expressions. Okay? If you can master those two things, you can really get your characters to act and better tell the story. So, same figure, two very different poses. What do we think this guy's feeling right here? Defeat, sadness, the shoulders are slumped, the head's down. What about this person? Victory, the V pose with the arms, or they're super happy, but body language, without even knowing who it is, we can tell what they're feeling. And so practicing your figure drawing with expression. Yep.
I also heard that hand placement can also help convey the characters, like if their hands are out and open, like they're very expressive, or if they're kind of more reserved, or if their hands are up behind their back, that kind of thing. Like that goes with body language, but still.
100%. And actually, it's funny you bring something up that I've heard many times to never do.
Really?
Speaking of hands, and I'm guilty of it. I used to do it when a character's explaining something. They call them pizza hands. If you're drawing your character doing this, who does this in real life? Sometimes, right? But, I guess I'm doing it now. But it's to show the point. Every time I draw that, nope, those are pizza hands. Don't do it. But the trick is, what else can you make it? You could have a hand up here if somebody's thinking, or hands on the hips. Hands are part of the whole body. They are part of the body language. Now, as far as drawing expressions, it's all about the eyebrows and the mouth. The eyes can tell the story whether they're barely open, closed, or wide open, but it's all about eyebrows and the shape of the mouth. Hopefully these are easy to read. What do we think that is? How about that? Right? Shock, surprise, confused or suspicious. That's all you need. You don't need the whole head, the nose, any of that. You can tell it all through the face, the eyebrows, and the mouth. Okay, now, perspective. Here's the trick. Drawing your characters, it's great. And a lot of us practice drawing a character with nothing in the background. As storyboard artists and illustrators, you're going to eventually need to draw your character in a place, right? And you have to draw backgrounds, whether it's for a comic, a storyboard, an illustration. So learning perspective is key. It took me years to really figure it out. I'm just doing a basic demo of this. You guys all know about the horizon line?
Yes.
If you're out on a boat, it's where the sky and the ocean meet, right? There's a horizon line in every drawing. Sometimes it's not in the drawing, it's just off, okay? Perspective deals with vanishing points. I use one-point perspective all the time for a lot of reasons. Mostly when you want your viewer to look at something, put that something right over your one-point perspective vanishing. 2-point perspective, we have 2 vanishing points. 3-point perspectives, we have 1, 2, and 3. So imagine this is a desert road, and this is the road going off into the distance. The further off away it is from you, the smaller it looks. Here, can you picture a box kind of right there? Imagine we're in the middle of an intersection with a bunch of 2-story buildings. And we're looking down the street here. There's another street here. We're going to turn and look at the corner. Now this is almost like you're on top of a skyscraper looking down. Now let me show you some examples. These are some environmental drawings I did for a virtual world thing that never came to fruition. But but it was where you can make a virtual character and go to hang out and meet other virtual people. What kind of perspective do you guys think this is?
Storyboard.
This is actually one. See, we have our horizon line, vanishing point there. All these lines are straight. There's no second vanishing point it's going off to. So we're just, all our intent, every one of these kind of horizontal lines are pointing to that one perspective. Here's our 2-point perspective. This was supposed to be an industrial skate park. Now, the vanishing points, the horizon line is in this drawing. The vanishing points are not. Let me show you.
Whoa.
Right? So they're way off screen. Wait till you see this one. This is 3-point perspective. Again, we're above, kind of looking down. And if I were to map out the perspective lines, they're way off. So you don't always have to map out all your perspective points. You just need to be aware of them. Okay. And gosh, as far as practicing it, going out into the street to look at real buildings, great. This you can practice at home and use your Google reference. Yeah.
I learned this in the class because we were doing perspective. They told us that the easy way, we're gonna add the character in those perspectives, you would draw with the perspectives, not add it on later. Is that 100% true in your case or no?
So I was going to go over,
Okay.
and yeah, there's something to, because yes, you use perspective to create your environment, but then you have to place figures in it, and that gets tricky. So, gosh, almost 100 years ago. Have you guys ever heard of an artist named Andrew Lewis?
Yes.
Good. Go look for his book. I believe it's now public domain.
It is.
It's called Figure Drawing for All It's Worth, I believe. And it has a ton of great lessons. Again, Andrew Lewis, Figure Drawing for All It's Worth. This is a page from it, and it's masterful in showing hanging figures on the horizon. So while we don't have a building or a room, it's all these characters out on a beach. Okay, and we're assuming all the guys here are of similar height. And some are close to the camera, and then some are further away. But wherever the horizon line crosses one figure, which is right around the navel, the waist area, no matter how close they are or how far away they are, it's still crossing at the same point. Now we have these seated figures, and the horizon line is crossing right at their chin or neck. Same thing. Even if they're really close or pretty far away, it's still crossing at the same point. You're hanging the figures on the horizon. Okay? This gets tricky, and I'm not going to go through it too much. When your horizon line is above the characters, when you're looking down on a crowd scene, you draw a character that's close to the camera, and then you measure their head height from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, and that is your unit of measure. So we're 2 head heights from the horizon line. So when we draw characters that are further back, we're still doing 1, 2 head heights. This character here, 1, 2 head heights. You see? So it kind of works the same if you're doing an upshot on somebody as well, with characters close to the camera and characters further away. Okay, let's do a demonstration. Hunter, we're good to go. Thanks for hanging out. So if you have a notebook or a sketchbook or paper and something to draw with, please feel free to follow along. Oh. No worries. Here we go. Yeah. Okay. You guys see this okay? Yeah. Yeah? Anyway. Okay. That'll totally. Yep. Okay. All right. Sure. Let me do, thank you very much. I'm gonna do a real quick demonstration of the hanging figures on the horizon line that I was showing you about. So we're gonna do a quick horizon line here, one vanishing point, and a second vanishing point. And I'm gonna draw perspective lines.
Right down there.
Yes. Yeah. That works. Yes. Sorry guys, it's kind of hard to talk and draw at the same time, like walking and chewing gum. But I hope you guys can see how I'm using the perspective lines as guidelines for where I'm putting the corners of the walls and ceilings, the doorway, a window. Okay. Lost my erasing. So now we're just going to place a figure right here. He's pointing a gun at something. This is kind of me doing a gesture drawing just to get the basic sense of the figure. If we were to draw somebody about to run in the door who's the same height as our figure here, looks like the horizon line is crossing again right at the bottom of the rib cage or the belly button. So the door should actually be like tall. And here's this person going, oh no, stop, don't shoot, whatever it is. You know. And if somebody's super close to the camera, if their rib cage is here, their hips are here. Actually, it would have been better if I was doing this. All right. Just ignore that. Okay. But now we don't just have figures standing in space, floating out in a void. We're trying to place them on the ground or in an environment. A lot of drawing, you're going to be doing a lot of overlapping, drawing through things. And one of the mistakes I used to make was to draw a figure and then try to draw the background behind them and just not draw what was behind the character. But that leads to problems. Now, give me a show of hands, you guys. Who primarily draws? I'm going to ask for paper and then computers. So show of hands, who mostly draws on paper? Okay, I'm happy about that. Who mostly draws on computers? Who does both? Everybody, right? One of my favorite things about working on the computer are layers, right? You can draw on a layer, you can draw a background on a layer, then you can create a new layer and draw your figure over that, then you can select it, move it, shrink it, grow it. That helps a ton. And that has made storyboarding go a lot faster. Okay, now let's do a gesture drawing demonstration. Who wanted to be the model? Why don't you come on up, stand right here, and we're gonna do 2-minute gesture drawing poses.
Are you okay with accessories or no?
Sure. Hang on, I'm texting my kid. All right, timer. One thing I recommend, don't do any poses where your arms are above your head. I've seen people pass out by doing that too long. Okay, let's start a new one, 2 minutes. Can everybody see? What's your name?
Katie.
Katie. Can everybody see Katie okay? All right, 2 minutes is going to start now. Okay, remember, we're not going for precise detail, just the basics and the attitude and the pose. This is an exercise just to warm up your hand and your brain. Twenty seconds left. Okay. Go. Let's do one more pose and then we'll wrap it up. Yeah, but, oh, no. Okay, can you give us one more pose? Okay. All right, there's that timer. We're gonna do another 2-minute pose, starting whenever you're ready. Yeah? We go.
Okay, all right.
Oh, there you go.
Twenty seconds. Three, two. All right, super. Let's give Katie a hand. So, you guys, I'm trying to cram weeks worth of material into 45 minutes. There is so much I have not covered, I've just scratched the surface. One thing that occurred to me as we were drawing, and who mentioned line of action as the website? That's a basic principle in drawing and especially animation drawing. On one of Katie's poses, there was a great line of action. There's kind of this sway. Every figure, even if they're standing rigid and stiff, there's a line, a kind of a through line. And when you're drawing dynamic action poses, finding that swoop, that line of action is key. Also, I should have researched this. I think it's called contrapposto.
Yes,
Where the line of the shoulders and the line of the hips are kind of tilting different ways. The weight of the figure is standing on this back leg here, right? There's so many principles. It's amazing learning to draw and getting better. Looking back at old drawings and go, oh man, I thought I was good back then. I'm way better now. Seeing that improvement. And sometimes I've gone back and looked at stuff that was 20 years old and I'm like, dang, all right. I didn't suck that bad. But just the daily practice, or every day you can, every moment you can, the more you draw, the better you will get. Let's do a final round of questions and then we'll call it. Yes.
Yeah, can I sit up there? I'm your son.
I know. But
Okay, fine.
we'll talk.
I'll get to
Yes.
So when you were drawing gesture, I noticed that you did mention the heads. How good are you at, how often do you eyeball like head as a human measurement? I often have to do that and it's a bit iffy with it.
That is an excellent question, and let me see, because I actually have, yes, you're talking about using heads to measure proportions,
Right.
right? The head height I was talking about, most people are 6 heads tall. You can draw people, 7 heads tall, 8 heads tall. That is a great theory when you're starting out. Eventually, it becomes instinctual, and you'll be able to spot, I didn't draw that character tall enough. You can just tell. But measuring head heights for every figure takes too long. I'm not saying don't do it. It's a good principle to use. But if you have to do it for every drawing, try doing it without and just eyeballing it. But it's a good question. Yes.
A better way of measuring out proportions for bodies is probably more so learning the association of different body parts rather than just the head itself, because different people have different proportions. So a good way to do it is to be like most people's hands, their heads, and stuff like that. And
Right.
a lot of things people overcompensate when they call the different certain body parts. It's better to just sort of see the body overall and associate with the body parts.
Right, babies' proportions are different than fully grown people, adolescents,
It's
it varies. But there are general rules, like eyes being almost in the middle of the head, the nose being in the middle. There's all sorts of rules to proportions that I went over previously, but I didn't include in this class. They're in every art book about learning how to draw. Yeah.
So you mentioned when you're moving from 2D animation to 3D animation,
Yeah.
different ways you use the camera. What's the least obvious intuitive difference you saw between those two?
It mostly has to do with when you're moving the camera. With 2D animation, it's usually a static drawing. With 3D animation, you build a 3D set and you can move the camera through it in all sorts of different angles, that if you were trying to do it in 2D, you would have to redraw the background from every different angle. Now, some people go nuts, like when 3D animation first came out, cameras were flying all over the place, right? Just because you can move the camera doesn't mean you should. But when it came to storyboarding it, if the camera was doing a drastic camera move, we had to redraw that background from every angle. So that was the hard thing. But once we had a set built in SketchUp, a 3D model, we could take screenshots of it. And that made it go a lot faster. You had a question.
How do you suggest better flow when it comes to bent limbs, like bent elbows or bent knees? I feel like mine's become super stiff and it just doesn't look natural anymore.
It's tough. It's really tough, right? Practice drawing from life. I don't know a shortcut.
I do. I feel like I keep doing that right now. There's a really good guy, if you look up on YouTube, for someone who's also doing figure for, uses a thing called the lightning bolt technique. It's a very interesting way to see the front of the leg and then it starts to almost with like a Z lightning bolt into the back of the cat.
Okay.
That's really good for more like action oriented figure. That helped me a lot when I was first learning how to do figure.
So the shortcut is YouTube tutorial.
15-year-old one, but yeah.
But mostly it's look up good reference practice. And sometimes the better you get, you'll take some steps back. And it also depends on the day. I've had days where my drawing looks like crap. And I'm like, I drew better than this, 20 years ago. And don't forget to warm up every day. Which I need to take my own advice there. I'll often jump right in, but the more you warm up, the more you'll be in a flow and the better you'll look with stuff. Yes?
If you want to apply for a position as a storyboard artist, what should your portfolio look like?
Okay, that's a great question. Have some gesture drawing in there. Have storyboards in there. Make up your own story, or maybe if you like a certain show, make your own version of that. But it should have examples of the job you're applying for. Some people suggest, do everything. Character design, background design, storyboards. If you want to be a board artist, show that you know how to draw and you know how to tell a story cinematic. I'll get into way more detail on storytelling on tomorrow's program. Yep.
What shots do you personally find? I know that each shot has its own inherent challenges, like action shots, humor,
Yeah.
deep emotional shots. But for you personally, what was challenging for now?
Those three you mentioned, I love them all. They're not challenging. Conveying humor and comedy is a blast. You use the body language and facial expressions. Action, you do a lot of foreshortening, a lot of one-point perspective with stuff coming at the camera. The shots that were hardest for me to learn, and I still haven't mastered them, are when the camera is low looking up or up looking down. Because then all those head heights and proportions those rules kind of fly out the window. So it takes a while to learn that. A lot of people use mannequins or action figures for reference. It's not a bad way to practice those different crazy angles. Let's take two more and then we'll wrap it up. Yep.
This is a business question.
Yep.
What is this contract, hourly?
I mean both. I've had jobs where I was paid per page of the script. But usually they hire you for a certain number of weeks or months, as long as that show is in production. And then when it's done, you either move on to another production or you're unemployed for a minute.
So what is the price scale from starting to professional?
So you mean what's the lowest salary versus the highest? I've worked for no one, you know, my first jobs were on spec. My very first comic job I made $1,000 for 20 pages. That was great. So I drew 3 more, didn't get paid for those because the publisher was but I learned. I tried to apply it like, okay, I learned my lesson. I got to draw 3 more comics and I learned how not to do business. Make sure you have a contract. Yes.
So, I just had a quick question about this, because you were talking about how making storyboards for any like your only examples or like for other shows. When you said that, like, are we okay to draw certain characters that we like in a show in a storyboard? I was told, like, if you're gonna show your portfolio, you shouldn't put like the obvious, like that's like Disney, Mickey Mouse everywhere, all that stuff.
I don't know if you're applying for a job for Disney. That'd be a bad idea if you know how to draw Mickey.
Okay, right.
So I would counter that advice. But you may not want to show a Mickey Mouse storyboard to Warner Brothers if they're trying to,
Right, okay.
right?
So,
So, you know, just don't waste too much time. Spend months on one board for one show for one company.
okay.
Building the portfolio is really, really hard, especially early on. And the whole industry has kind of shrunk just in the last year. With streaming and the pandemic, blew up. There's more work than there were people, and now it's contracting a bit. But there's still art jobs. Just let's kill AI so that it takes. Right, so that is basically it. Thank you all for coming and staying. I hope you learned something. I'm at a table off to the side with next to Bill Morrison and Jessica Fong. Come by, say hi. I have some prints. And I hope to see you all there. Okay, thanks.